Hey, what's up, guys? Driving to work this morning. I apologize if the video is a little darker. It's not quite light yet. It's pretty early in the morning where I'm at as I make my commute in. So, had some things on my mind I wanted to talk about as far as how do you know? Well, a couple things. First of all, one of the questions I've gotten from people, via Facebook or just aside from how do you get started, which again, check out Paul's videos, but how do I get started with Alibaba and ordering, and what do I do? Where do I even start on Alibaba, right? So what I would recommend, I'm going to give you guys a few tips on, first of all, how do you not get ripped off on your shipping costs, and how do you choose a good supplier, and also some of the changes Amazon has made that's truly affected the shipping costs and completely changed the game, in my opinion. I'm not sure how much you guys have seen when it comes to the warehouse situation where they want you to split your supplier order up, but it adds significant costs. So I want to talk about shipping. How do you get the best deal? How do you know you're getting the best deal? Are you getting ripped off? Is shipping really that expensive? So I'll tell you, first of all, guys, shipping is that expensive, unfortunately. In my experience, you're going to pay anywhere from usually around a third to a fourth of your total cost of shipping, or even more, up to half, really. This last one I just did, this last product, it's like 40-some%, but it was a small order. So keep in mind, when you order more, your shipping cost as a percentage is going to go down. At least it should. And if it's not, when I talk to your supplier, make sure they're not ripping you off. But so let me give you some of the tips I've learned on how to make sure that you're not getting ripped off, and a couple tricks I've picked up so you can actually save some money. Maybe just a few $100, maybe more. But yeah, let me go over them with you. So first of all, one of the big questions I've got, and one of the big questions I had when I started, is how do I find the best supplier to begin with? I know Paul recommended using those templates, which are great. Sending out the inquiries. What I like to personally do, and it probably takes more time, but I think I get a more immediate answer, which is what I'm looking for. I like to jump on the Messenger app, and a lot of times they want me to go to like WhatsApp or some other application. I always say no, because I want everything to be recorded on Alibaba. I want to make sure there's a record of everything we talked about. So if there's any kind of dispute, then I can go back to that record and say, look, this is what they promised me, and this is what I got. So, people may have some other tips for that, but I always recommend using the chat app. I'm not saying at some point you won't have to talk to your supplier directly via Skype. I mean, I'm sure that's a great idea. I've never done that. I've always just chatted with people. The person or the people I've bought off of, I've never actually talked to in person. But I made sure via the chat app that I clarified everything I wanted, sent pictures, made sure they understood what I wanted. So, first of all, how do you find that first supplier? I got on, I just start talking. I do send out inquiries. I do use the template that Paul provides in his YouTube videos. But I usually jump on and just start talking to people. And I talk to at least minimum, like, if I can find it, if the product's not really rare, like maybe 8 to 10 people. I want to make sure that I'm getting the best possible price. So I put out, chat, hello, how are you? I always start in the middle of the night, at least where I am, because China's just not awake yet. So I don't usually start till 9 o'clock Eastern. I start just messaging people. And don't be afraid, guys, to go with a supplier that has 1 or 2 years gold supplier. I'm going to tell you some of the advantages of that and some of the disadvantages of going with somebody like that in my experience. So first of all, I've always found, and I've talked to a lot of suppliers, that if you talk to these suppliers that have maybe 1 or 2 years experience, they're hungry, man. They want to give you a great price, and typically they're more willing to work with you on a lower quantity order if it's 250 items, because they want to build their reputation and they're hoping you order more. It seems to me that these, the gold supplier is very expensive to pay for. So if you have 5, 6, 8, 10 years of gold supplier experience, you're probably a successful company in China already. And what that means is they're gonna sometimes be less likely to work with you in such a small order. They have guys ordering 1,000 and you want to order 200, and they're like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw a higher price out there and see if he takes it. So I've gotten the best prices from guys that are have less years, but you guys may have had a different experience. I'm not sure. Maybe you've never done it before. But don't be afraid. Just make sure they have trade assurance or PayPal. Those are the big things. Make sure they have one of those too, just so you're protected. The trade assurance is what I use personally. PayPal costs more. They want to charge you an extra percentage, but PayPal is probably going to be a lot easier to get your money back, is my guess. But I've used trade assurance. Thank God I haven't had any issues, but Alibaba's not going to be in business if they were screwing people over. So just keep that in mind. I mean, just make sure they have trade assurance when it comes to your suppliers. So don't be afraid to go with the smaller guy. The disadvantage to going with them, yeah, maybe you'll get a better price. And I don't think they'll skimp on the quality. The quality should be just as good. Like, that's what you talk about in the chat. What I experienced is they didn't know how to ship to Amazon. They didn't know the rules. So I had to do a lot of legwork there for my first product, because they didn't understand like what the rules were, what the weight of the boxes had to be. They didn't understand that the boxes had to be in equal numbers. And if you read Amazon, if you go there and like look it up, they're going to tell you I think it has to be like under 50 pounds, or it has to have, and don't quote me on this, I think it has to be under 50 pounds, has to have a special label on it saying, team lift. But so I always make sure boxes are under 50 pounds and the items are in equal quantities. For example, if you're sending in 200 items from China, the items, I think my first one was in like boxes of 25 each. And so they were equal numbers and they didn't weigh over 50 pounds. So they didn't know that though. Like, the supplier was a very new supplier. They didn't understand that. They didn't understand that the bags needed suffocation labels on them. So those are the big things. Make sure they didn't understand that the products needed to have a made in China sticker on them, which is my understanding you need that for imports. So those are the big things I just mentioned right there that come to my mind. Like, you're working with a smaller supplier, and that's not always the case. At least in mine it was. They didn't understand the rules to shipping in to Amazon. So I kind of had to help them along the way. You'll probably have to do the same. So understand that, yes, you'll get a much better price. I mean, I got like 20% less on my first product, but I had to do a lot more legwork because they didn't understand the rules. So I was helping them out when it came to that. I want a supplier that can just send it to me, that I don't have to worry about, telling them how to do it. So if you go with a bigger supplier, they're likely going to know how to do that. They understand it needs to be in poly bags. They understand the suffocation labels and the made in China sign or sticker. They understand how to do this stuff. So again, advantages, disadvantages. Yes, you'll save some money potentially, but you'll probably have to do a little more legwork. So again, don't be afraid to go with a smaller guy though. I love it. I almost always try to go with a 4 years or less, or even 3 or 2. I find I get better prices. So let's talk about shipping. And Amazon, they've really changed things quite a bit. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but if you've ever shipped in a product, it used to be you quote them when they ask you about shipping. You give them the big Texas warehouse, because that's where like everything goes in Amazon, and then they distribute it out to other places. But what I've found is that this wasn't the case at all. I'm pretty sure Amazon's made these changes more recently. Is like, I just ordered 200 of the third product I have, and they wanted me to ship it to 3 separate places. I mean, 3 places for 200 units. That's insanely expensive. Like, who wants to ship 50 here and 70 there, and it doesn't make sense. So Amazon's really made it tough on us, especially the small guy. I got a couple ways you can get around that's worked for me, and it works now as far as I know, and I think it'll work for you too. So you have a couple options there. First, you can go ahead and sign up for Amazon's ship to one warehouse program. So recently I'm ordering 500 plus units. I tried that. They wanted me to ship everything to Detroit. I'm like, man, Detroit? Like, couldn't you have picked anywhere near the coast? You had to pick like the furthest. I love you, Detroit, but they had to pick the furthest inland place like possible. Like, what's that all about? So the cost would have been ridiculous, but it would have been, it's like $100, and again, don't quote me on this, look it up, but I think it's like $120 extra to have it shipped to one warehouse, and they wanted me to ship it, Amazon wanted me to ship it to Detroit. So that's expensive. I was like, man, if it would have been like maybe Texas, it would be worth it, right? Or Washington, or some place in California, some place along the coast. Nobody wants to ship it to Detroit. It's like the furthest place away from China. So anyway, here's how you can get around that, at least in my experience. So they typically would want you to ship those 500 units to 3 separate places if you don't choose their ship to all one warehouse scenario. I want to mention also, on top of that 120, if you have a bigger item like a couple pounds, I think everything over 2 pounds, they charge you an extra 10 cents per item. So like that can add up real quick. You can end up paying an extra couple $100 on top of having to ship it to Detroit or somewhere in the middle of the country so Amazon can distribute it. So like essentially Amazon's kind of making you pay these extra fees to have it distributed, which either you're going to have to pass on to your consumer or you're going to have to eat the cost, which is a killer if you're a small timer just getting started. So here's what you can do. It works now. Last time I tried it, I think it'll work for you. It'll probably save you a couple $100, and then I'm going to talk about shipping and how you can save some money there and not get ripped off. So what you want to do is, there's an option when you go to replenish your inventory. Let's say you're getting in 250 units. So what I would do, and don't be real concrete on that 250, like be flexible. Maybe order 260, 270, and I'll tell you why. So when you order, let's say, put in like just, and day to day, the warehouses where Amazon's going to want you to ship it, they can change day to day. That's been my experience. It probably depends on which warehouse needs stuff, and they decide that day where to ship it. So you could check the different days and see if you can get a better warehouse. That's one option. Number two, don't go with the ship to all one warehouse. Ship it and just put in like 1,000 units, right? This is a little hack you can do. So if I'm getting 250, I put in 1,000 units. One of those 3 warehouses they probably want you to ship it to might be like 260 units to Arizona, right? So there you go. You're like, you just delete the other 2 and you keep the 260 to Arizona. You didn't pay extra money to Amazon. You didn't pay the extra, 120 plus whatever you paid for pounds. So you didn't pay the extra to Amazon. You deleted the other shipping plans, and you kept the one that was like 260 to Arizona. That's awesome. You've got a closer warehouse, and you didn't pay extra money for it, which is great, right? So that's what you have to try to do. It's worked for me. I've done it twice now. I don't know if Amazon's eventually going to change that. It doesn't affect your shipping performance or anything like that. So try that out, guys. If you need help with that, I don't have the video yet, the skills yet to do it, but I think I can probably walk you guys through how to do that. So again, go to send, replenish inventory, choose a much higher number. You got to play with it sometimes. Choose a much higher number than what you're actually having shipped in. Take the one that's closest to how many units you want, whether it's under or over a little bit. You can adjust that a little bit too, up to like 5%. So you'll be able to hopefully get it around like $250, what you want it, and there you go. You cancel, you delete the other 2 shipping plans, and then you got a closer warehouse, and you didn't pay extra money. So that's a little hack you can use, which is great. And let's hope Amazon doesn't change it. So third thing, guys, don't want to make a super long video, but let's talk about shipping. Yes, shipping is crazy expensive. Yes, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. But how do you know you're getting the best price? I mean, you're kind of subject to what your supplier tells you. If your supplier's like, well, your shipping's going to cost $800. Well, what are you going to do? Say, no, I'm not paying that? Well, yeah, you can actually say, no, I'm not going to pay $800. But what are your alternatives? Like, how are you going to tell your supplier no? What are you going to do different? Like, how are you going to get a better price? Here's what I did. I'll tell you a little story. The night before I was getting ready to ship in, I had given him the Texas warehouse, thinking, okay, wherever they're gonna have me send it, it can't be that much different, right? So then I went to get the shipping done, just like I talked about. They tried to split me into 3 different warehouses to send it to, and I'm like, oh my goodness, the shipping cost difference was gonna be like $500, and I was like, no way, it's not gonna work. So I did my little hack. I got it to one warehouse, and I got it to a Washington warehouse right on the coast, right? I'm thinking, man, this is going to be even cheaper. I should save money on this. This is going to be awesome. He quoted me $300 higher than the Texas warehouse. So I asked him, I'm like, what? How is this possible, man? Washington's closer to you. Washington's closer to China. He said his justification was, excuse me, that Texas, the big one in Texas, is where everybody ships it to, and that's cheaper to do it because that's where everything's going. I'm like, all right, I'm doing sea shipping. I'm like, I guess I can understand that, but I still feel like you're taking advantage of me when it comes to shipping. So I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours, and what I did is I said, look, I'm not paying that extra money, no way. But my supply was ready to go. We had already gone through everything, and I think I would lose that dispute because, I told him at one place and then I changed the warehouse. So I was kind of subject to this guy, and it didn't make me feel great about working with him, but it's been a good experience overall. So what I did is I got on Alibaba and I looked up every freight forwarder that had 5 years or more experience. And I got them. It was the middle of the night. It was 11 at night. I didn't want to be up doing this, but I didn't want to spend an extra $300 either. And then on top of that, have to try to do the 120 to get it to a closer warehouse. Anyway, get on Alibaba. This is what you should do, in my opinion, for everything to make sure you're not getting jacked in shipping. So get on Alibaba, look up freight forwarders, whether it's air shipping, they have both, or sea shipping. If it's sea shipping, see where your supplier's closest port is, or ask your supplier, because you're not going to know for sure. Say, which port do you use to ship out? And I looked it up on Google Maps and I saw which port, so I typed in that port, because there's only a couple major ports, right, that these, especially sea shipping, that they ship out of. So I looked up the port and I looked up suppliers that have 5 years or more experience when it came to shipping it to the USA. I got them up on the Messenger app. I said, look, I'm getting a quote, and I got the information as far as how big each box was, and the total order, the total weight and size, and you're going to need to know what the item is, or tell them what the item is. You know what it is. You're going to have to tell the freight forwarder that. They need to know for tariffs and import duties and all that stuff. So make sure you have all that information ahead of time. Tell your supplier, look, I'm going to look, I can have somebody else pick it up cheaper. Can you give me this information? So I get all that information off my supplier. I went ahead and I talked to 2 different suppliers that have 5 years or more experience, or gold supplier experience. So I knew they were going to be legit. So when it comes to suppliers, or not suppliers, freight forwarders, make sure you go with the guys that, in my opinion, have at least 5 years or more, because they're not going to. I've read an article about they'll take your stuff and run away with it, and you don't want to deal with trade insurance and all that. So here's what you do: freight forwarder, 5 years or more experience. Get them on the Messenger app. Tell them the size, everything of your product, all the details of your product, the total. Okay, not just the individual, the total. and they're going to give you a quote. And then you go and you talk to another one with at least 5 years experience, you're going to get a quote. So I got 2 different quotes that were like $100 off, but both the quotes were like $200 or $300. They were like $300 cheaper than the original quote that I got from this guy. So like we're talking hundreds of dollars there. So then I played the 2 freight forwarders off each other, and I said, well, look, this guy's offering me this price. Can you beat it? And he's like, yeah, I can beat it. So he gave me even a lower price. And before you know it, like they're competing against each other, and I'm getting quotes lower than the original price to Texas. And I was like, wow, you're talking hundreds of dollars difference. So ideally, you want your supplier to ship it because they're liable for it. So the problem is if you get a freight forwarder to pick it up, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure once they pick it up, like your supplier's off the hook. Now, not when it comes to quality, but or if the item's not right, but when it comes to like if it's damaged or it's never received, like your supplier's off the hook. They gave it to the freight forwarder. So make sure your freight forwarder, if you're going to use your freight forwarder, has insurance, and they all do. Just make sure they have like a default insurance that'll cover you for like up to $10 an item. At least the one I was talking to did. So make sure you ask them, say, look, this is the cost of my item. Is it going to cover my item's cost? And do I need additional insurance? And if so, can you please give me a quote with everything? And even with all of that, with the insurance and all, it's going to be typically cheaper, in my experience, than your supplier. So once you get that quote, once you kind of play the different shippers off each other and you get the best price, go back to your supplier and say, look, and this is what I did. I said, look, you're trying to charge me an extra $200-$300, right? But I'm getting a quote that's lower than your original shipping quote to Texas. So I don't want to have a bad reputation, or I don't want to have a bad relationship with my supplier. So I told him, I said, look, if you give me my original shipping cost we discussed, and we'll just call it even, and you ship it yourself. And he said, okay. He wanted to talk to he called my bluff. He wanted to talk to it wasn't a bluff though. He wanted to talk to the freight forwarder. Well, the freight forwarder confirmed that he was going to do that price. And let me tell you this, if you do decide, if your supplier is not willing to move off that price and you're getting a much lower price with a freight forwarder, as long as you have insurance and they have a good reputation, I think you're going to be just fine. So you could go with the freight forwarder. Just make sure that you do the shipping separate with your freight forwarder. So make sure you use trade assurance with your freight forwarder for the shipping, and just the item cost trade assurance with your supplier. Hopefully that makes sense. So make sure you pay just for the item with your supplier, use trade assurance, and then do a whole separate trade assurance order with your shipper. That way you're covered on that end and you're covered on the supplier end, and make sure you have insurance and make sure it's in that chat. So, Alibaba can see that they quoted you that you're covered for up to this amount. So it sounds like a pain in the butt, but it can save you a ton of money. It can make sure you're not getting ripped off in shipping, and it's worth it. It's worth the hour or two if it's going to save you hundreds of dollars, right? So definitely consider that. It'll save you money. So don't just think about saving money on the product. Think about saving money on the shipping, because you can do it. Just get freight forwarders involved, and if they quote you a higher price, keep going until you find one that's lower. Then they're willing to negotiate. All the shippers are willing to negotiate. They want your business. They're doing mass amounts of stuff. So keep that in mind. Hope this video has helped you out. Just to recap, so we talked about how, finding a supplier. Don't be afraid to go with a smaller guy when it comes to a supplier. Even if you do some extra legwork, you might be able to get a better price. We talked about Amazon, how they've changed the rules and they want you to ship it to multiple warehouses, and a little hack to get around that, which I think is great, and it works currently. And we've talked about how to make sure you're not getting ripped off on shipping. So these are all big things, guys, when it comes to getting your product over, how you can save money, assure you're not getting ripped off or feel like you're getting taken, and always try to maintain that good relationship with your supplier. Remember, in the future, if you're going to order more and they're willing to work with you on these small orders, be gracious, You know, don't be direct, but don't be mean or get irate with your supplier. I mean, unless they did something that would warrant it. You know, make sure your supplier relationship is good, because you want them to make a good product for you. You want them to succeed. You want to succeed. But at the same time, don't let them take you on shipping, or, you know, let them charge you an extra couple $100 the night they're going to ship. So make sure you cover your butt. I hope this helped you guys out. Please comment if you have any questions. I'll be happy to try to answer them. And I hope to make some more videos just about the Alibaba experience in general. That seems to be one of the biggest hurdles for most people who try to get started on Amazon. Okay, guys, thanks for signing off. Have a great day. Peace.